Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's Wednesday, April 21st. Happy to have you here. Austin, how are you doing?
Great, Andrew. How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. So all things helium. Everyone knows I'm such a helium fan, big fan of Desert Mountain, and I wanted to reach out to Royal Helium because I'd heard about them. I knew that they're a Canadian company. I knew a little bit about them, but I wanted to get them on as well because there's lots of room in this space for people charging after helium. It's such a vital component. So I wanted to reach out to the president and CEO, and I think chairman of the board as well of Royal Helium, which is Andrew Davidson, and Dean Nawata, who I've known for a little while here as well, who is running communications and IR for the firm. I think that's the title. But we've got you both here. We're going to talk about helium, why, what's the big deal, why we need it, but more importantly, what's going on with Royal Helium, what's your key factors for success, where are you at, what's happening? So how are you doing, Andrew?
I'm great. I appreciate the time. Thanks for reaching out to us.
No, of course.
Share the Royal story. And obviously, we're awfully bullish on helium as well. So.
No, I love it. And I love it. It's a Saskatchewan story. I like that. It's a Canadian story. So tell me just the big right off the bat, like what's the deal with Royal Helium? What's so exciting about it? What's the key drivers right now? And where are you guys going like this short term? If someone's looking going, listen, I like Desert Mountain and I want to hear what you guys are up to.
Well, you can boil it down to basically 3 points on why Royal Helium. It's location matters. Saskatchewan's been producing primary helium since the 1960s. It's not new here. It's an old industry. We're just shining new light on it. 2 is the fact that we produce helium without methane, which provides some significant cost savings on the processing side. We produce it with nitrogen, which is simple to process out. And number 3 is scale. I mean, we're a company that owns over 1 million acres of helium rights in Saskatchewan, covering the highest known concentrations of helium ever recorded in Saskatchewan. Our project is massive. The intervals we've drilled through are very, very significant. So in terms of potential upside of gas in place, I mean, the reservoirs here are virtually unmatched. So those would be the 3 primary reasons. I mean, most of your viewers and subscribers are going to understand the helium market to a great degree. We benefit here from being close to oil and gas infrastructure. The drilling, everything is very commonplace. We're right in the middle of thousands of oil wells here. We use the same rigs and same crews. Lots of advantages to where we operate.
Yeah, that's one of the things that just stood out like at first was like, listen, there's a huge infrastructure here. So transportation, crews, all that. It's drilling like any other drilling. It's a bit more specific, but they've been drilling it as a secondary byproduct for years, but you're now a sole primary driver on it. But before you go into some of the details like grade and some of those intervals, let's just take a big step back and just remind everyone, listen, hearing a little bit about helium, but why do I care? Like, what's the big deal with helium?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and the answer isn't balloons. It's it's everything else. So whether or not we're aware of it, and most of us aren't, and I certainly wasn't before I got involved in this back in 2016. People use helium every day. It's in everything. I mean, the fiber optic cables we're communicating through right now, helium is required in the manufacturing of those. The high-tech manufacturing space is very, very interesting to us, and to me, it positions the helium exploration and production game more as a high-tech product as opposed to a resource project, right? I mean, we operate similar to a resource project. We explore for it, we define it, we produce it in the same way. But the industries that use it all are not in decline. They're in fact in rapid growth phase. It's from healthcare to high-tech manufacturing, rocketry, quantum computing, you name it. If it's in high-tech publications right now, you need helium to create it. And that's the terrifically interesting part about helium from my perspective, is just the diversification of demand. We're not limited to a single industry that requires helium. It's healthcare, high-tech, rocketry, military, quantum computing, cloud farms, welding, lifting, you name it. It's all over the map. So there's a fair bit of industry safeguards there over downturn, right? We're not producing something that's used exclusively in energy. In fact, it's not used in energy at all. So big buffer there, which I love about it. And on the supply side, obviously we've been dealing with decreases, especially in North America over the past number of years, which I'm sure your listeners are familiar with, but they warrant discussion again. North America is actively searching for replacement supply for the the sales that used to come out of the BLM storage cavern in Texas. And there's only a few projects going right now that have the ability to realistically replace some of that supply. Desert Mountain's on that list. We're on that list. There's a couple of private companies also on that list. But in terms of how do investors play this shortage, the options right now are two: Desert Mountain and us.
Yeah, which making such a niche player and such a key resource is so exciting. This is the stuff I love, is that people kind of go, why do I care about this helium? Not just party balloons and whatnot. And then you realize where it's used, and that's kind of the foundation I look at for any kind of investment. Is I would rather own those component pieces and the people that are kind of working in that realm, and because they're not serviced as well. And you have a natural supply and demand curve that's been developing over the past, I'm going to say maybe 8 years or 9 years, as privatization away from the public markets in the U.S. with helium. So this curve has been shifting, and it wasn't being met as much. And we kind of hinted before that a lot of this was just a secondary byproduct of natural gas drilling. It wasn't as taken seriously. This has opened up an amazing opportunity for someone to say, listen, if we made this a primary focus, where do we look? How do we make it economical? And how can we then also store it, deliver it, and transport it to where it needs to go?
Yeah, and it's a great point you make there about, well, where do we look? Because this helium is not available everywhere, and you have to, there are very specific geological components that have to be in place in order for helium to be created. And that's why locations like Saskatchewan, like Arizona, like Wyoming, Utah, places that have elevated levels of uranium concentration, you need that. It is a prerequisite to helium production. So, natural gas production in Pennsylvania, for instance, is going to have zero impact on the helium supply. Zero. Yeah. In fact, it's a negative because there's no helium produced in shale gas. So as people have moved towards shale gas plays and away from conventional, that's been a pretty big hindrance on the supply of helium. Because you're right. I mean, it's up until now, basically, it's been exclusively produced as a byproduct of natural gas.
Yes. And it's interesting. So a lot of people, if they know anything about Saskatchewan as well, is that that's uranium town. That's northern, the Athabasca Basin up north. I mean, that's anyone who knows mining, knows energy, would go, boom. Well, that makes sense then. So,
well, that's right. Some of the highest uranium concentrations in the world are here in Saskatchewan. Some of the largest mines are here. So it is a natural jurisdiction, and the same is true in certain states in the U.S. as well. I mean, it just you follow uranium production, and you end up finding a helium deposit if you look hard enough, if the geology is correct subsurface. Yeah.
Now your stock too, you've got quite a fan base and following as well. Lots of investors. The stock has performed very well, and it's pulled back a little bit, but as one would expect. I always look at these things and people go, "Oh, the stock is down." Like, well, listen, nothing ever just goes up permanently up. And the big factor of that is, it's just like every day, you're like, hey, it's up again.
Some of us learned that the hard way.
It's more awesome. And even the companies that I love dearly, and people will call me and say it's down, this and that, and say, well, listen, if you've got investors that came into this story at 5, 10, 15, 20 cents, the stock gets 80, 90, or in some cases $3, $4. They should have every right to sell. They'll keep a position still, but that's going to cause, that's selling. That's how this works. And you get up, I'll pull back, and up, I'll pull back. As long as the trend is the right way, you need to make space for new people to come in and with different models and expectations. Some people don't want to grow a business. Some people just want to do a placement, make 20%, I'm out. And they don't care what it's in. So I always kind of help to educate people that the model that you're using to invest is critical. And knowing that other people have a different one is also critical, because it doesn't mean that management's not doing their job. It means that, listen, if they're hitting the milestone, they're doing what they say they're going to do, and they've been doing it, you reward them, you reinvest. And if it's down, great, you're getting more.
No, that's right. And it's important to note from a Royal specific perspective is we've essentially done 2 raises as a public company. One was July of last year, one was December of last year. And they were at 5 cents and 22 cents respectively. And the stock price of the company has been in the money for all of those investors the entire time that they've been outstanding. So it is normal to expect some selling, even if it's just selling to exercise warrants, as we saw with the July placement of last year. Those warrants are essentially fully exercised at this point. We expect to see some coming in on the December placement where we raised $6 million.
Yeah.
It's normal, and the whole does come off tomorrow, so we would expect a little bit of a pullback leading into that.
And I can speak specifically for Desert Mountain. Is it rockets up to 440? It's pulled back down to 369 or something. But they had their warrants. If they kept it above 350 for 10 consecutive days, they're forced to exercise. So I just told everyone, listen, it's going to climb, and then it's going to come back down. It has to, because they know that 350 is the price. So. And now someone who's outside doesn't know that that's happening. It looks like, oh my God, the volatility is crazy on this thing. It just went up and came right back down. Like, well, they're going to get exercised.
Well, that's right. And I mean, stocks are going to trade themselves into a natural floor, right? I mean, that's what happens. The economics of the projects don't change. If you liked it at 70 cents, you must love it at 50 cents. That's the way it is. And we've traded, a few million shares here in this 50-cent range, which seems to be making a new level for us. Which is a fine base to build off of when the stock we put out there has been at less than half of that. So
Austin, you saw an article this morning as well that I think you wanted to touch base on quickly. Oh, I think we lost Austin. I think he's. Oh no, there he is.
Am I back?
You're back.
You're back.
I'm back. Okay, cool. So no, I saw an article that Simply Wall Street put out, and they said that you guys can easily afford to drive business growth with the way that your current cash flow situation is going. And they kind of touched on it, saying that at your guys' current spending rate, you're looking at about 4.9 years worth of cash flow. So I just was wondering if you guys wanted to touch on that situation at all, kind of enlighten our viewers on the cash flow specific and kind of how you guys operate the business.
Yeah, sure. Well, that cash flow model that they're referring to there is based off the production scenario from these 3 wells we just finished drilling. The payback period on those wells is about 6 months to get your cash flow back, and the wells have a useful life of a little over 10 years historically here. So we only model out 5 years. Anything beyond that just gets into the realm of silly. So that's where the 4.5 years must be coming from. I haven't read the article yet, but I'll do that shortly after we're done here. But that's where it's coming from. And so these wells that we are drilling, we're anticipating producing about $3 million of gross revenue per year per well. So the economics on them and the ability to drill out fields grows very, very quickly off of the cash flow from these initial producers. So. And
you've got the evaluations done. You've got economic
still underway.
Still underway. Okay.
And this is an important point as well. It has taken us a long time to get through this, and there's a very it's a Hollywood problem. When we went into drilling these wells, we expected to be testing basically one zone, that being the Deadwood Formation, where helium jointly is produced from in Saskatchewan. What we found is as many as 5 to 13 zones containing elevated levels of helium in our drilling program. So we've had to test, 5-6 times the amount of zones that we intended to determine which zone we're going to end up producing from.
Yes.
And while that's a great problem to have, it takes time, it takes money, right? Because every time you test something, it's a matter of, 4 to 5 days per zone, per well. And we've got 3 wells where we're doing it. We do have 2 rigs on site working on these 3 wells right now, but they're big zones. They take some time. I mean, for example, in the zone we're testing over at our climax number 3, our 3rd well, is 30 meters right now is what we have open. 30 meters of prospective zone that has returned quite economic grades of helium. So the scale of resource there is huge, but it takes time to test it.
And I mean, I haven't looked. I wanted to purposely not do too much research, and that sounds pretty ignorant. But I wanted to just get you to hear right from your mouth what's happening, what's going on, so I could get kind of pumped about it. Yeah. Are we talking? Are these grades now? Maybe you can't say them. I know sometimes IROC is pretty specific, but this is high grade helium.
Yes, globally speaking, absolutely. I mean,
yeah. So we're not talking 2%. We're not talking 1%. We're talking high grade helium, which is what people want to hear. Primary producer. Near term, like what's the? I mean, once again, this is a tougher question, but is there a hope for Q1, Q4 next? When's the hopeful production time frame?
Oh yeah, we're targeting 2021.
Yeah,
initial production time.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
So
to clarify, I think Andrew, is one of the things is what we're seeing. So indications of is economic grades of helium, and one of the points that Andrew was trying to make is one of the big differences for us in Saskatchewan versus in Alberta, Manitoba, Arizona, elsewhere, is the size is very large. So the pay thickness he was talking about, one well, one set of zones of two or three actually, is actually, we're talking about 30 feet thick.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The thickness is 30 feet, 30 meters, sorry.
30 meters, yeah.
Like 100 feet of thickness. And the lateral extent of it, of the footprint that we see off of seismic and geophysics, is in excess of several sections, so meaning several square miles.
Yes.
Okay. So it's, not unlike like a higher grade and a lower grade gold mine, for example. But the difference is, with a gold mine, with a little lower grade but large size, you have to move a lot of rock.
Yeah.
With helium or natural gas or that type of thing, the gas, whatever the composition is, basically comes out of the hole on its own power.
Yes.
So that's a huge economic difference with what we're doing. So Andy and I sometimes say, we're really elephant hunting here relative to some of our neighbors.
Yeah, and it's certainly, you're in the right area for sure. I mean, once again, just reiterating,
well, that's the other thing.
Yeah,
is that, as Andy also mentioned, relative to almost all other players in the world, the area that we're drilling into is actually basically in the kitchen where helium is made. Almost everybody else in the world is capturing helium higher up hole, as it has sort of migrated up hole into natural gas or oil traps above. Andy mentioned that helium is formed as a byproduct of the natural decay of uranium, right? In the Precambrian basement, well below where oil and gas is. So, for example, one of the areas that we're testing right now that's very thick, like in excess of 30 meters or 100 feet of thickness, is actually right in the kitchen where the helium is formed.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then what's the plan for, because with all gases, it's a matter of transportation. Like, do you have an offtake? What's happening? How are you thinking of transporting it? Do you have markets that you're kind of already entertaining, looking at, chatting to? What's that going to look like? Obviously, there's no end to pipes and streams and what's leaving from this region from oil and gas. But what's your take? What's your angle on that?
Well, I'm viewing this sort of on a modular basis. We're looking at dealing with these first three wells without looking to the future potential on it. So on these first three wells, we're in discussions with a few different groups on offtake agreements where they will handle all the transportation risk, and we essentially sell them the gas at the well.
Yeah,
and that removes processing, transportation, marketing risk from our plate and puts it firmly on theirs.
Yeah,
we're a small team here at Royal, and we're that way on purpose. And we understand exploration risk. We understand how to do it and de-risk things. We don't understand. We don't have a team that understands enough about the marketing of helium to want to take that on.
Yes.
Wells. So we'll learn from our partners, and we'll build towards doing it ourselves as we get bigger. But initially, we want to get these wells on stream and start cash flowing.
And then it would just be constantly, expanding that resource. I think the amount of land you have now, I'm not going to guess, but it was such a staggering number. Remember, I did look at it and I thought, oh my gosh, that's a lot. That's a big land package that you have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just as an example, the three wells we drilled here are into a seismic closure area covering 30 square miles.
Yeah. Okay.
Of seismic trap here with zones that we've tested so far, from 15 feet to 100 feet. I mean, it's enormous, potentially enormous.
Yes.
Over the ground yet, but we've tested helium in all these wells now, and it's returned economic grades. So we found it. Now we got to decide where we're going to produce it from.
Andrew, maybe to further to answer to your question as far as downstream activities, very similar to what Desert Mountain or anybody else would do. In the beginning, what we would be doing is basically selling the gas right from the wellhead, so the valve at the top of the ground. As you get, half a dozen wells on, then you start thinking about your own separation units and distribution, things like that. But it's important to note that helium doesn't go into a pipeline system like natural gas.
Yes.
This goes for everybody else as well. So it's taken from the wellhead, it's separated out and put into tanks or cigar tubes that are trucked away as a gas. From there, if you want to truck or ship further, like Japan, for example, then it has to be liquefied.
Yes.
To go a longer distance. And so you have to go take the gas in tanks to a liquefaction facility of some sort. So downstream, there's a tremendous amount of further business ahead of us, well into the future. That goes those 2 or 3, 4 downstream steps. Yeah,
you can see the enormous workload and team you'd need to bring on if you even wanted to consider, like, listen, we want to get involved and then transporting it in some way, shape or form. It's like, okay, listen, that's taking on a whole other hedging risk of. So it's got to be cool. It's got to be pretty cool. It's got to be this, that, and if we got to get it to the Vancouver Harbor to send it off to Japan. Like there's a whole other at play network that takes on shape.
And down the road, the beauty get there. But we're taking these sort of logical, smaller steps. We're taking small bites of a very large cookie here. We'll get to that point, but we're going to.
You can always grow into that for sure.
Yeah. So Desert Mountain and ourselves and anybody else that gets into the space, the beauty of it is we all can basically sell helium right from the wellhead. Every single, like all 5 main wholesalers or distributors of helium would be willing to come right to your wellhead and buy it right from the wellhead. So not Desert Mountain, not us, any others. Nobody is having to store it or wait or have to think about the downstream workings. We can sell it right away.
The market of the open is that open and ready for it, which is
absolutely
which is exactly what you want.
Well, it is, and all these groups are looking for secure long-term supply, right? So sales agreements here work on long-term sales contracts, generally 3 to 5 years, and they build those out into the future, looking at how you're going to develop it, because they need to be able to offer it to their customers, right? Because all these major industrial gas companies are not users of helium; they're resellers. Well, they need to know that they have a stockpile, so that if SpaceX comes and says we need to buy $500 million worth of helium over the next 2 years, they can safely say, yes, we have that in our pipeline. So that's how it works. And that works so great for the producers as well, because you have a predictability of cash flows that you can effectively model and plan your activities if you've got a set price in your contract with various escalators in it for inflation and what have you. But it's easier to build out your development path.
And it's cool because I was just thinking, I know of a crypto star company. They're doing mining, like actual Bitcoin mining in Alberta. So you see a lot more companies moving into Canada, especially because of like coolant. They need to be in cooler places. And we know with data storage and all these kind of things, it's the heating up of the chip, because these things are going 24 hours a day and they need to keep cool. So they literally find cooler places to work at. But you would even have end users right close by saying, listen, we're setting up these farms, either it's data storage, it's cloud storage, like you were saying, or it's Bitcoin mining. Those are natural customers too, that are going to be direct customers that would say, listen, we're next door, we need this. And once again, it's not, I always laugh to people, because I'm from Calgary, is that when they hear about mining compared to oil and gas, they're like, listen, Andrew, if we hit a hole, we're making money tomorrow. If you guys in mining hit a hole, you're asking me for another $200 million and 5-year wait.
Exactly. But your point's valid. I mean, we've had talks back even as far back as 2018 with potential Bitcoin miners moving into Saskatchewan, exactly for the purpose you talk about, that colder climate. And they are natural customers for helium. But aside from those, others that are of interest to us specifically in Saskatchewan would be the universities, all the hospitals, the Canadian light source synchrotron that's here in Saskatoon. It's a heavy consumer of helium. And as North America continues to shift towards greener power sources and starts to look towards small-scale nuclear, that's a big market opportunity for helium producers, especially locally.
Absolutely.
And that's a push that Saskatchewan is going to be making, and Alberta will do the same, as will most of the rest of Canada if they haven't done so already. So that's another segment that's going to be opened up to us in the next number of years.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that is one of the factors. I know you guys have talked about Desert Mountain a lot, and I think one of the reasons that we can very well coexist together. Andy and I are always cheering Desert Mountain on when they put news out, and maybe some of your listeners have read some of the stuff I've put on Twitter. We're big fans. But, I want to point out that one of the reasons that it works this way is, yes, the United States initially would probably be our largest buyer of our helium in Saskatchewan, and we're at the U.S. border where all our land is. But and Desert Mountain and others, they will do well to service also the United States demand. But in addition to that, Canada, one of the things that we're looking forward to further downstream is the ability to export to places like Japan and Taiwan, especially these big semiconductor manufacturing places. That's difficult from almost any other jurisdiction. They currently buy from Qatar and Russia. They would be very happy to be buying from Canada. And any helium that's produced in the United States is likely going to stay in the United States. Yeah. But there's a huge market in the high-tech sector and demand for helium out of the Japans and the Taiwans of the world. And Andrew and I have already been in talks with a couple of groups out of Japan, for example. Again, this is way further downstream, but it's just one of the reasons that we and Desert Mountain and others can coexist, I think, quite nicely here in what you would call perhaps the Western world, as opposed to Russia.
Yes. No, this is great. Listen, what can you leave us with? It sounds like there's going to be a ton of news over the summer and the next. I mean, with production coming on in the end of the year here or fall or whatever, there's going to be a lot of buildup of getting that ready, getting it prepped. We're getting one step closer, and then of course, once you get production, it'll be that excitement of, okay, we got numbers now. I'm sure it's going to be no end to the news flow. So, and the people are definitely waking up to, why we need to see helium. That's why I love getting on calls like this. It's just to remind people, listen, this is a big market and it's a big space, and we need to have people excited about it. And people like yourself, Royal Helium, supplying this. So what are we looking for, like short term? And I usually think short term is a couple of years, but let's say short term is 6 months to a year out, so that people are saying, okay, I'm not committed to buy today, but why am I putting it on the side of my chart right now? Why am I watching right now? What should I be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, our path over the next year is fairly well defined, and over the next 6 months, definitely well defined. We have to finish off this testing, and we'll report those results on the flow rates, etc. That should be in the next 40 plus days. We'll have that. At the same timing, we'll be actively in discussions with offtake partners, so we'll have news on that as well. And once we have the flow rate numbers, we'll have a initial resource report coming out from Sproul, one of the highest regarded reserves engineers in the world. And now all that's going to be happening in advance of production here, hopefully for the end of 2021. But at the same time, we're not going to stop drilling. We intend to continue on and prove up more in this climax field, and then move on as well and develop some of our land over in the southeastern portion of Saskatchewan. With 1 million acres of developable acreage, we've got a lot of drilling to do. and a lot of discoveries to make. And we're doing it on a very rational timeline where we're going to go in and drill 3 exploration wells at each one of our blocks. But and all those can be turned into producers, provided that they're successfully drilled. So the runway's long here. I mean, we've got, theoretically hundreds of targets that we have to refine down. But it's going to be busy. But all good things coming our way, I think.
Well, awesome.
And then I would suggest to you, Andrew, that the shorter time frame window and news flow, which always interests investors, I believe. If you compare us to Desert Mountain, they did theirs slightly different, it seems. They drilled their wells, they got their permits, they drilled their wells. It drills fairly quickly. They put out flow rates first, and then they did their engineering and testing, and a few months later, they came up with actual composition percentages, and at the same time, almost at the same time, the reserve report, which is for us is what Sproul would do. With us, we've put out some initial composition numbers. We're still working on that, followed by our extended flow test, right? And then into the actual reserve report that Sproul would do. So, investors can look forward to some information here because we're right in the middle of testing right now. Yes. So we're talking about news and updates here. Again, similar to Desert Mountain, but probably within a month-ish, the 30, 40 days.
Well, I'm glad I had Austin on here as well, because Austin is pretty active inside like the Reddit community and the Clubhouse and Wall Street Bets and whatnot. I wanted him as well to hear from you guys from a different perspective about helium, how to take that into these rooms to get people excited, because it's amazing to see this whole new. It kind of reminds me of 2001 when the big internet explosion, where young people were excited about, hey, I want to invest in the market. I want to look at tech. I want to look at innovation. Whereas this is, you can't have, you're not going to have any of this cool stuff in the future without helium. You got to have it. So, So Austin, I don't know if you've got any thoughts or anything just to wrap this up with, but.
No, exactly. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I mean, what first attracted me to helium was even those conversations with you months and months ago where you were like, hey, do you know why you need it? And I was like, no, why do I need it? So for me, it's always just that message to other people and getting guys who like this and go, hey, their financials look really good. Hey, their management team looks awesome. Let's get the ball rolling in the right direction on this. So no, it was awesome getting to hear from both of you. It's a fantastic space. I went from knowing nothing about helium to being absolutely addicted to it now. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, I suffer from that same disease. So
no, it's good. Well, these stories I love. I love these stories where it's you find a niche market that's absolutely critical and essential. Especially, I mean, everyone can be on the same page moving forward. That with innovation and the way things are going, things are getting smaller, powerful, faster, and we need to cool. We don't want to cool that market down, but we need to cool those actual hardware pieces down. And this is where helium fits. And if we can get that message out to people and let them know, listen, if you want those really fast video games, you want your fast fiber optic, you want all that cool stuff, guess what? We're going to have to get it for you. So I love translating this message and getting it out to people so they get excited and they can see a stock where, listen, it doesn't have to be, if I think of innovation, I only think of like Kathy Wood from ARK Investments or Tesla. I mean, there's more than 2 players in the world, right?
That's right.
So I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for coming on and educating us about Royal Helium. There's going to be lots of news here, so everyone keep an eye out for it for sure. And I always tell people, listen, it's whatever the price is there's a price. Sometimes it's a good reflection. Sometimes it has no reflection. But if the management is doing what they said they're going to do and they're hitting targets and they're doing all the deal, then you know what? It's a company worth looking at. So I appreciate you guys coming on.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Always fun to talk about. So.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. That was awesome.
Austin, let's meet up in the clubhouse.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. You betcha.
Yeah, we'll talk helium in the clubhouse.
Sounds good to me.
Beautiful. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Enjoy your day.
Thanks.